Friday on Sactown Sports.
Well, we've been very fortunate today. Of course, we've been fortunate enough to have you with us now. We appreciate that, Jay and Whitey. We've also been very fortunate in that we've had a couple of outstanding writers with us. Anthony Slater joined us at 3:30, Matt Barrows at 4:30, and we have another one as our luck continues here. Nice enough to join us with his thoughts on the Scott Perry press conference today. Outstanding Kings beat writer for the Sacramento Bee, Jason Anderson. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing okay, Whitey. How about you?
Good. I just I'm wondering here what really stood out to you most about today's press conference from Scott Perry.
I guess the first thing I would point to is, something that I think a lot of people know about Scott Perry and a lot of us have heard is just how personable he is and that he's a good relationship guy. He's got a great reputation around the league. He's well respected. He's well connected. He's somebody who I think you can talk to, and he's had success over the years. He's been in some difficult situations and helped a couple of organizations, kind of see their way through some difficulties. I think we saw today that he's eager to get to work here. I think it's a job he's wanted and been interested in. And, he wants to do this. And I think he hit all the right notes today and talking about how he's going to go about it.
Jay, you are someone that has the opportunity in many different realms to be around the team more than even some of the other beat writers and insiders here for Sacramento Kings. Your take on, and this is something we've talked about today, just so much of the brass of the Sacramento Kings being in attendance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was interesting. There were, there were a number of members of the previous front office that were there. Alvin Gentry was sitting there. Phil Jabor, Paul Johnson, right up front with Scott's wife. And so that is interesting to see. Scott talked about talking to everyone in the organization and taking his time to decide, who's going to be a part of this going forward. And so I think, it sounds to me like the door is open to a lot of these folks staying on board and being a part of the group going into the future.
Jason Anderson, the Kings beat writer for the Bee, nice enough to join us. What did you think the way Scott handled a couple of fastballs, if I may? He had the question about what he said about Zach LaVine in a podcast back in 2023, and then the questions about autonomy. What did you think of the way he handled those questions?
Yeah, pretty well, I thought. With the Zach question specifically, you knew that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that what he said was unfair. Really in the first place, it's just sort of a fact that, Zach hasn't won at the level that I'm sure even he wants to. And so I don't know how awkward that conversation was. And I'd be curious to know, whether it was something they laughed about, when it came up or whether it was just, Scott was on the defensive at all or whatever. But I thought that what Scott said was great. It was like, look, now it's my job to put the pieces around Zach that help him win at a higher level. And, and certainly that is what his job is now. I think Zach's going to be a part of this thing going forward, and Scott's going to be looking to find the right, complementary pieces. And as far as what was the other, the autonomy.
Yeah.
He did tap dance a little bit, but look, Vivek owns the team, and owners are entitled to have a say in what happens in their business. But at one point, Scott said in no uncertain terms, make no mistake, Vivek has empowered me to lead this team and make critical decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's where they're at. He's going to have room to do that, especially early on. I think Monty did early on, and then, as things went sideways a little bit, that's where that dynamic begins to change. But I would fully expect that Vivek's going to trust Scott. Again, somebody with a great reputation, and a proven record of being able to do this job. I think Vivek's going to entrust him to do that, at least early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
J.A., one of the pressing questions, I think, and I believe it was the very first question I was asked, was head coaching position and where that lies in the search. I mean, not to put you on under the spotlight, and of course you don't have to mention any names. Have you been getting any fruition that you've heard any other names outside of who our interim head coach is right now?
The interim head coaches right now.
Well,
are you referring to David Adelman?
Well, for Coach Doug Christie is technically, I guess a filler at that position right now, or it could be a coin flip. But have you heard any other names being mentioned your way?
And even if he does want to mention the names,
you don't have to mention the names.
You just want to know if he's heard of it.
Have you heard any whispers? Yeah.
I'm going to say no, not specifically.
Okay.
Look, I think there's a good chance Doug keeps this job. Scott said he's going to take about a week. At least that's his plan. A week's not a very long time to conduct a job search. I think that I think he wants to settle in. He probably wants to talk to Doug some more. He probably wants to talk to some other people some more. He wants to make sure that's that's the direction that they want to go. It is possible he's got somebody else in mind that he also would like to talk to. So I don't, I'm not going to rule that out. But I do think that Doug's in a position to keep this job. A lot of what Scott said in describing what he wants was he was describing, what he was describing Doug in a lot of senses. And he was very complimentary in terms of the way, he connected with the guys in the locker room. And I think we all saw that and we heard that from players during exit interviews. I was very impressed with Doug's ability to lead, and inspire guys, and that the results were mixed over 51 games. It's sometimes very good. And then at other times, not so good, but you have to remember what he was dealing with in terms of the roster turnover and just this series of injuries where you keep losing guys and you're trying to establish continuity with a new group and you keep losing pieces like Domas and Malik and Keegan for a few games here and there. And so that was just a very difficult position to be in. And yet after 51 games, Doug's record is 27-24. I think you have to look at that. You have to appreciate it. And, he's not going to, I'll tell you this, Scott's not going to find anybody out there whose love, for the organization, the city and the fan base, is any higher than Doug's is.
Mm-hmm.
That should count for something. You got to be able to coach too, but that's for them to sit down and discuss and figure out if Scott trusts him to do that going forward.
It's Jason Anderson, of course, from the Sacramento Bee, Kings beat writer. When Scott Perry said the Kings need a point guard, as he pointed out, if you watch the team, there's a need there. Jason, do you see it the way I do? Is that perhaps an indication that they're not going to do anything really drastic? They're still looking to augment what they see as the core of this team rather than rearrange the core of this team. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I think so. And I have been told, in the latter portion of the seaing that there was just no desire to rebuild. And I don't think I don't think anybody who was in place previously or still maybe, in place and top, at the top of the organization. I don't think that's what they want to do. I don't think there's a lot of patience right now for like a 3 or a 4 year rebuild. So, I think they're going to probably try to find a way, just to retool, to whatever extent they can and remain competitive and maybe try to strike gold somewhere if they can.
Jay, was there any read into the quickness, and I think that was brought up today by someone, the quickness of Scott Perry being replacing Monty McNair. At least we heard it the next morning versus, of course, it being announced a couple of days later. Was there anything into the quickness of it, or did you kind of expect, hey, this is how the Kings operate?
Well, I mean, that's one thing that really didn't come up today. Maybe we should have asked Scott to kind of illuminate that a little bit for us, just how it happened so fast. But look, they've known Scott. Obviously, he worked for the organization, in 2017 briefly. They formed relationships. He knows Vivek. He knows Vlade. I don't know that his name surfaced publicly in 2020 when the job opened up, but I have reason to believe that he was interested at that time in the GM job. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not surprised, that he was already on their radar. And I think the writing was on the wall for Monty and Wes and those guys. And so, I don't think anybody should be shocked that, Vivek and the powers that be were out, maybe trying to see what was next for them. When and if, they parted ways with Monty and the rest of that group.
Jason Anderson from the B with us. Something came up today, Jason, that reminds me of something that you wrote about and we've talked about on the show. Scott Perry today talked, among other things, about the importance of having a defensive presence. And I remember you writing about what Mike Brown said. It was not last season, the season before, right after that terrible loss at home to the Pelicans, where Mike Brown said, hey, we can't think we can outscore people. We've got to play defense, even though there's people among us who think we can just outscore people. So there seemed to be kind of that, as we've talked about and you've written about, maybe some conflict there. When is the last time we had a Kings general manager talk about the importance of a defensive presence? It seems to me it's been a while.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's a real good point. Because I don't know, not in my time, covering the Kings, it just has not been a big point of emphasis. And everybody knows, you got to play some defense. But, I think from the time Vivek bought the team, they wanted, he came from the Warriors system where it was, the offense was what it was. And that was exciting. And it was, extremely highly successful for them. And, it almost seemed like they were trying to recreate, some of that magic here. But look at the playoffs right now. Look at some of these scores. Like they're not, a lot of these games are 94-88, and Mike wasn't wrong. Like Mike was not wrong. I remember Mike, we were on the road somewhere one night and he handed me we had a discussion and he handed me a printout of like the last 10 or 20 NBA champions. And there was like one on the list that wasn't top 10 in defense. And, so he wasn't wrong. And Scott sees that and knows that too. I think that that's good. Like they have to get better defensively. One other thing he said, 2 words, length and athleticism, was music to the ears of, like, when he said that, I could, out of like my peripheral vision, I could see heads start to nod in the room. And people are like, yeah, we've been saying this for 2 years, and they couldn't find a way to sort of round out the roster in that way. And so again, I think he hit all the right notes. I think he sees, what needs to be done. And, now and try to do it.
Enough of the Kings talk for me, Jay. Before I let you go, it's off season, baby. Go ahead and take a trip down to Cancun, as they say. But I want to ask you, this Kings team will never let you do. Fresno State grad, man. We haven't had the opportunity to talk about the move of your school going to the Pac-12. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, man. Let's go.
Come
Dogs. On. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the Pac-12 is anymore.
Right.
I thought it was the Pac-2.
It's Fresno State, baby.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to run this thing. It's yeah, I don't know, man. I just, college sports is almost unrecognizable to me at this point. When you've got Cal and Stanford and the ACC, they're not on the Atlantic coast. Okay. I do not understand what they're doing. And it's hard to watch. I hope they make it make sense someday, but not right now.
Well, thank you, Jason, for helping us make sense of the press conference today. Nice seeing you today. I look forward to your coverage. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime. Have a good day.
You too. Yeah, I was in the murderer's row there, Jay. Not me, but I was next to the G-Man, and I think Jason Anderson was next to him.
Yeah, you were.
And I was like, man, I don't know if I belong in this row.
It's legendary row right there. I see. That's called big time row.
Yeah.
Then Sean was behind you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, we were locked and loaded on the right side. Chris Haynes, me,
Yes,
we were, come on, all the Sports 1140 brass next to each other.
I was sitting there, Chris Watkins in front of me, and Mo was behind me, and getting ready. I'd been sitting there a while, got there early, and it gets a little more, the anticipation builds.
How'd you pull up there, Mr. Gleason?
9:35, maybe 9:30.
Oh, okay. Yeah. When you said early, I was like, I know you didn't pull up at 9:15.
So I'm getting ready, and I hear Stretchy B. Wait, what? Hey, Stretchy B. So I turn around. Jay's here somewhere, and there he was. Stretchy B. Morgan Reagan says, "Is that your name?"
Yeah, of course. Incognito.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. If I only want to get your attention, I call you that Stretchy B.
Yeah.
People don't know you Stretchy B. That's for the insiders. So if I'd have said Whitey, Kev, Gleason, everybody would turn around like, who was that? Stretchy B. Nobody turned around. Go Stretch.
I almost didn't turn around myself. I appreciated that.